This is Never Down, Never Out with T.R. Matson. This podcast is about discipline when motivation fades, resilience when things get hard, and showing up when quitting would be easier. No hype, no shortcuts, just the mindset required to build something real. One day at a time. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back. Episode 29, Never Down, Never Out podcast. I'm excited. Little hint of some good news for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be February 4th, and episode 30 will go live on February 4th. If you've been following me so far, you know how important episode 30 is to this whole process. So listen to episode 30 tomorrow, February 4th, specifically on February 4th. That's all I'm going to say for now. So a little bit of a thank you coming tomorrow. That's only going to be for tomorrow, for February 4th. But let's talk about today, because we got to get through episode 29 before we can get to episode 30. Why effort is always worth it. This one's important to me. They're all important to me, but this one, I thought about it. It won't be a super long episode because I think the point can be made very clearly and concisely. So I've talked in the past how effort beats talent, how being consistent beats talent, how putting in the work beats talent on an individual level. Okay. So we're talking about effort today and giving your all. You know, one of the things we say around the house here is if anything's worth doing, it's worth doing to the best of your ability, putting in maximum effort for it. Otherwise, just don't bother. You're wasting everybody's time if you just kind of phone it in or not really work to the level that you could put in. So we've talked about, my son rowing on the rowing machine and how sometimes it's just going back and forth, and other times he's really pulling. It's explosive. And I try to explain to him why, if you're going to sit out there, if you're going to go through the motions, you might as well do it to the best of your ability. That's not to say you won't grow over time and your ability will get better. And then you'll look back on it and go, wow, I'm a lot better off than I am now. My effort today is significantly higher than it was, in the past. I mean, I can look at the first episode of this podcast 29 days ago and say that hopefully this one is significantly better. So the effort will give you growth, I think. But the thing a lot of people don't talk about is how your effort that you put into something may actually be helping other people without you even realizing it. So I've seen it multiple times in my life, in my career, where the things I was doing, the effort I was putting in, the showing up every day, the putting in the extra work, it was making a difference to other people almost more than it was to me in the moment. So the story I tell in this one is, and we talked about it previously. When I was in the Wall Bangers, I got the idea. One of the other lieutenants that was more senior to me had mentioned pretty early on when I got to the squadron that there was this program through the University of Oklahoma where you could get your master's degree while you're deploying. And essentially, it didn't cost a ton of money. That's one of the things I will say, anybody that's in the military, take advantage of all of the schooling that they will give you. There's so many things. I mean, I did my master's. I forget, I must have finished it around 2008. The only thing I paid for my master's, for a whole legit master's degree from the University of Oklahoma through this program, was the cost of the books. That's it. That's pretty impressive in my mind. So there's a lot of opportunities if you're in the military. Take advantage of those opportunities, because the people that are not in the military would probably be very happy to have those opportunities. So I'm going through this master's degree. I'm writing a lot of papers. I'm doing a lot of correspondence stuff. And, sometimes, most of the time I would do it in my room, my 6-man room, when it was quiet enough. But occasionally, I'd be sitting in the squadron ready room or sitting at the squadron duty officer desk, although I didn't sit squadron duty officer much while we were underway, because as a landing signals officer, that was your duty. But sometimes I'd cover for friends, let them go eat or whatever. And I'd be working on a paper or working on some research. And I didn't realize who was really watching. And I spoke previously about how nothing I did was extraordinary in my mind from an achievement standpoint. But because, again, every one of the other pilots and naval flight officers in the E-2 squadron was doing basically the same thing. Now, they weren't all doing their masters, but they were all operating at a fairly high level. And one day, I was the aircraft division officer, and I get a call from my chief petty officer. And he goes, "Hey, sir, when you get a chance, I need you to come down the shop. So-and-so needs to talk to you about something." And I'm like, okay, that's not an abnormal thing. I mean, I'm the division officer, right? I'm in charge. It could have been he was trying to get a leave chit approved when we got into port, or, who knows, signing off certain qualifications. There was a ton of things that we would interact with. So it wasn't abnormal. And I go down, I had a minute. So I was like, well, I'll head down now, right? And I'll go down to the shop, and he's sitting there with this third class petty officer. And so it's, the petty officer sitting there and the chief petty officer. And I walk in and I was like, "Hey, chief, what's up?" And he goes, he has something to tell you, something to ask. And I go, "Yeah, what's going on?" Everybody was kind of acting really weird. And the petty officer said, he goes, "Sir, I'd like your endorsement and recommendation to put in for an officer program." And I was like, wow, okay, that's, not a small thing to put in for. So sure, let's talk about it. And I could almost tell, because the chief I had was fantastic. And anybody who's been in the Navy knows, a good chief makes your life so much easier. Just like I've said in the past, where, I could have never, ever launched off an aircraft carrier once, let alone as many times as I did, without all the work of the enlisted personnel up on the flight deck and doing their jobs day in and day out in some of the hardest conditions, right? You talk about people putting in effort. Whew, that's an environment where 100% effort is the minimum, and you have to do it all the time or else people die. But I had a great chief, and I kind of, when you work with somebody like that, you can see and read their expressions. Something was up, and he was kind of just sitting back, and he had kind of a half smile on his face, like he knew what was about to come. And I go, so I'm talking to this petty officer, I pull out his record, I look at everything, he's exemplary, like he's great dude, like he would be a great officer, like I have no problem, but if I'm going to endorse somebody, I want to know the why. And, I'm like, so I asked him, I was like, what caused this now? Like, we're on deployment. It's a hard time. We're out here, we're, you're being asked to do a lot of work. Like, why all of a sudden, because I had not heard about this, are you interested in being an officer and putting in this package right now? And he looked at me, and he looked at the chief, and he looked at me, and he looked back at the chief, and I'm like, there's something going on. These guys have obviously talked. And the chief goes, "Tell him what you told me." And I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" Like, and I don't think I come across as an intimidating division officer. I'm like, "Dude, what do you got?" And he goes, well, sir, this deployment, every time I've seen you up in the ready room, I see you working on stuff, computer. You're always working on something. And I asked around, and I heard that you're working on your master's degree. And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's, through this NC PACE program, it's great." And he goes, "But that kind of drove it home for me." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, you're a naval aviator." He goes, like, "You're doing the job that we all support." He goes, "Yet you're still working on yourself. You still have more that you can give, more that you can hone, and you're doing that." He goes, so how can I sit here in your division seeing you lead that way and not want to better myself and challenge myself? I don't get speechless often. That was one of those times. I mean, you want to talk about an ultimate compliment. This is a young man that I was in charge of leading, in charge of keeping our aircraft running. And he's telling me that the main driving motivation for him to want to better himself, for him to want to push himself out of his comfort zone, for him to want to push to new limits and try a whole new career path is because he saw me working on my master's, putting in the effort. It blew me away. Of course, I recommended him. I mean, how could I not? And he went on and became an officer and went on and became a pilot in the Navy. And it showed me in that moment that all of the times you're putting in the effort, all of the times that you're putting in the consistent work, even when you don't think you're really getting anywhere with it, you're just kind of going through the motions, you're putting in, you're not, there's no aha moments when you're working on your master's. At least there wasn't to me. It was just grinding out, working on it, putting in the effort, putting in the best that I could do while sitting on the Nimitz in the middle of the Indian Ocean or Persian Gulf. And it showed me that sometimes the effort that we put into something isn't really benefiting us in the short term, but it's benefiting those around us. And that kind of opened my eyes to what work we need to do. And it actually helps. Again, we talked at the beginning about motivation, discipline, all right, back on episode 3, I believe it was. Seeing that you potentially can help other people helps motivate me to be disciplined in whatever it is that I'm working. So if we fast forward now, 15 plus years later, sitting in front of a computer talking to you all about effort, well, it motivates me to have the discipline, to put in the effort, to show up every day, to record a meaningful message that people out there can listen to, and maybe it'll make a difference in somebody's life. And if the amount of work that I put in helps one person that I never even learn about, is it worth it? Was my effort and time worth it? 100%. Because if I didn't do it, then maybe I didn't help that person, and maybe that person doesn't achieve what they want. And I know that sounds very romantic and probably oversimplified and somewhat dramatic, but I do think that's how this world works. I think we live in a world where the ripple effect from the actions that we do on a daily basis affects more people than we realize, both positive and negative. I've often said before that we're the hero and also the villain in somebody's story. Everybody. Everybody on this planet, at some level, somebody looks at them like they're a hero, and there's at least one person that thinks they're a villain. And I promise you, I know I have the ones who think I'm a villain. Maybe I have ones that think I'm a hero too. But the point being is, the reason you get that label to that person is often because of the amount of effort or lack of effort you're putting in when you interact with them. If they see somebody that's hardworking, putting in the time, being caring, looking out for other people, then that's good effort. If they see somebody showing up to work and doing the bare minimum and trying to get out of things and having coworkers or classmates do all the work, you're probably going to be more on the villain side to that person. So when we look at it today, it's easy to put in the effort when you see tangible results for yourself. But what I challenge you today is to think about how it feels to put in the effort, knowing that your effort might be helping somebody that you never even realize. You may never even see. And I think if you can think about it that way, it will help you build that discipline. It'll help give you the motivation to build the discipline, to do the work, which ultimately will benefit you and make you successful. I'll leave it at that. Episode 29, one away from my first goal. I appreciate all the support. I challenge you today to put in the effort. Put in the maximum effort you could put in today. And then tomorrow when you wake up, repeat today. And if you do that for an amount of time that depends on what you're working on, you're going to see tangible results. Thanks again for tuning in. If this episode helped you, don't just listen, apply it. Progress is built in what you do after the message ends. Remember, never down, never out. I'll see you tomorrow.